Better, only 5 minutes behind. Almost. We almost got started on time once in the first half. I would say we'll do better. How about we try to do better in the second half? But the chairman better try to do better. We have a pretty full day, and this is the last time we meet in committee until turnaround. We'll be on the floor tomorrow. I begin at 9:30. I know the governor said Shawnee County state employees are going to be home. That's not us. We're here. We'll be on the floor, so we've got a lot to do. We did and we'll do work two more bills today, action on bills. And so if I ask you to carry one, politely say, yes, Mr. Chairman. So that will be nice. We think that will work. So today is going to be one of the days I look forward to where some of our best and brightest, the state officers of the Kansas FFA, will join us, and they're going to give a brief presentation on just kind of what's happening there. We will have our hearing then, and then at the end we will do action on bills previously heard, and then talk just a little bit about moving forward after turnaround. Thank you again for the snacks, for the bread, and for the sausage. We appreciate it, and we expect that to continue on the second half of the session. So who knows what we can all find in our freezers over turnaround when you're home for a couple days. So anything else right now for the good of the cause? Saying none, we will get things underway, and it's my pleasure to introduce Jory Ratzliff. He is the president of the Kansas FFA. And by the way, if people want to take pictures, don't go too far up, but make sure if you want to get these students so that they can show it on social media and everything else that they're doing. That would be great. Also, we're going to have some of our interns testify today for some of our legislators, and so it'll be a big day as well. And so we want to celebrate them. So with that, Mr. Ratzliff, I'm going to get it. Ratzliff, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, Chairman Rajes and members of the House Committee of Agriculture and Natural Resources. My name is Jory Ratzliff, and I'm currently serving as the Kansas FFA State President, and I'm originally from Galva, Kansas. Joining me at the podium today is Haley Hines, the State Vice President from Parker, and in the audience is Quinn Browning, State Secretary from Lacine, Zoe Rhodes, State Treasurer from Girard, Mason Springer, State Reporter from Neodesha, and Natalie Bray, State Sentinel from Scandia. It's an honor to stand before you today as we celebrate National FFA Week. And before I begin, Representative Minix gave a friend of mine a prompt last week, and I will honor his advice. I'd just like to pose a question to see a raise of hands of how many of you may be past FFA members or FFA alumni. Thank you. I've traveled much this year, and it's always inspiring to see just how many past FFA members that I've met. FFA has been a part of so many lives and continues to shape the future of agriculture, leadership, and communities throughout Kansas. National FFA Week provides an opportunity for us to reflect on the growth of our organization and the Kansas FFA Association as a whole. Today, Kansas FFA has more than 13,700 members, a record, and with over 232 chapters across the state, with many more still to come. In fact, at least one FFA chapter is located in 103 of the 105 counties in Kansas. From the smallest rural communities to the larger urban centers, FFA plays a pivotal role in shaping our students into the leaders and professionals of tomorrow. FFA functions via 3 avenues: the classroom and laboratory, FFA career and leadership development events, and supervised agricultural experiences, or SAEs. All 3 work in tandem to provide members with different ways to gain and apply their knowledge in the field of agriculture. While in high school, I didn't just learn in the classroom. I actively engaged in the world around me, discovered ways to serve my community, and put my knowledge to the test in the field of agriscience, where I learned about soil, experimented with soil, and developed a project centered around the different properties of soil. And through this 3-circle model, those in FFA are developing their potential for premier leadership, personal growth, and career success. FFA members in Kansas are developing their leadership skills through real-world experiences, whether that's serving as an officer in their local chapter, competing in leadership development events, or working together on community service projects. Students are learning how to take initiative, empower others, and lead with integrity. And these skills are vital not only in agriculture, but also in life, as many situations demand individuals with the potential for leadership. Students are afforded countless opportunities for personal growth, whether learning traditional agricultural skills, such as caring for livestock or growing crops, learning and understanding the economics of the industry and how to start a business, or involving themselves in the continual advancement of technology and the strive for innovation. I'm reminded of where my journey in FFA started, in a rural community, surrounded by agriculture, but with little knowledge of the industry myself. And now I find myself majoring in agricultural engineering, learning more about agriculture than I ever thought possible. Beyond these skills, FFA produces an understanding of time management, teamwork, and perseverance, ensuring that members leave the organization better equipped for life's challenges. The agriculture industry is the backbone of Kansas's economy. FFA's focus on career readiness ensures that Kansas students are well prepared to enter the workforce or continue their education. Whether a student chooses to pursue careers in agricultural education, science, engineering, or policy, or if their career path takes them to someplace outside of agriculture, Kansas FFA members cultivate the necessary skills, experience, and determination needed to excel in an ever-evolving industry. As we celebrate National FFA Week, it's important to look toward the future. The future of agriculture and agricultural education is bright, but it also presents challenges. Kansas is known for its rich agricultural heritage, but we face issues such as the increasing demand for food, the need for water conservation, climate change, and technological advancements. The next generation of agricultural leaders, those currently in Kansas FFA, will play a vital role in addressing these challenges. During National FFA Week, we have the opportunity to advocate for all that FFA represents: agricultural education, leadership development, and career readiness. And this week offers the chance to highlight the incredible impact that agricultural education has on our members, our communities, and our economy. Together, we can continue to raise awareness about the importance of these programs, celebrate the success of our young leaders, and highlight the incredible impact that agricultural education has on our members, our communities, and the economy. Let us advocate for the future of FFA and its members, ensuring that the next generation of agricultural leaders has the support they need to thrive. And by doing so, we invest not only in the next generation, but in the future of Kansas agriculture. Now, I speak and share the story of the incredible impact that FFA has on the lives of members, how it can change not only an individual, but a school and a community. And today I stand next to a National FFA Proficiency winner, one whose supervised agricultural experience did just that. Haley?
Throughout my lifetime, I have been surrounded by agriculture. My love for the industry ran deep through many generations until one day I decided to break the bale spike on my dad's tractor. I was completely mortified and still have yet to drive a tractor to this day. However, from that day, I knew that I wanted to have a tie to the industry, even if that meant I wasn't going to be actively riding in the tractor each day. During my freshman year, I had the opportunity to receive my first blue jacket after successfully memorizing the FFA Creed. The next task I needed to tackle was finding my own supervised agricultural experience. I quickly began brainstorming and identified a need in my community, a fight to make an impact on food insecurity. My freshman year was the first semester back from COVID, and students sitting next to me in class were leaving school hungry at the end of each day. After recognizing this issue, I decided to help make a difference by starting my school's first student-led food pantry. I named it Panthers Helping Panthers with the idea that students at Paola High School would be helping fellow students receive basic necessities. After 4 years of hard work, I was able to raise over $14,000 in donations. I also partnered with the animal science class at my high school to raise chickens and pigs in order to have a protein source and also have a learning opportunity for those students enrolled in the class. The success of Panthers Helping Panthers was not measured by tangible outcomes. It was measured through community involvement and engagement, students learning how to care for livestock, and most importantly, by the lives changed by something as simple as a meal on the table. Since graduating from PHS, I have passed down the food pantry to my sister and continue to mentor her throughout the process of helping others. Because of my passion for serving others through Panthers Helping Panthers, I am now studying nursing at Kansas State University with the hopes of becoming a nurse anesthetist. There is a valuable lesson to be learned about identifying a problem and working diligently to finding a solution. FFA provides members with the skills necessary to make a difference, not only in the classroom, but in their communities as well. Members of the committee, I thank you for your time, your dedication to our state, and your support for agricultural education in Kansas FFA. Happy National FFA Week. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we stand for questions.
All right, very good. Questions for the officers, officer team? Representative Rozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that. Just to clarify, you're all K-State Wildcats? Oh, yeah. Very nice. Very nice. Second, if you would like, I would love to talk to you afterwards regarding your degree path.
All right, other questions? Representative Minix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Students at Paola High School, do you know Merle Kaiser?
Yes, I do. My sister's actually dating his grandson, so. Yes.
That was not exactly the answer I anticipated. Merle is a member of the Kansas Master Farmers Group,
Yeah.
and he's an amazing person and done a lot within the community. So I thought you might know who it was. I didn't anticipate that type of relationship. Thank you.
Other questions? Representative Mosier.
Not so much a question as a comment. It's been enjoyable to visit with you all today and spend a little time with you. And I went to a high school that did not have FFA. Otherwise, I would have been an FFA member. So just putting that out there. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time. One of my teammates and I have to head out to a chapter visit so that way we can celebrate with members across the state. So thank you.
That's fine. Thank you. No, we're not. Yep, that's fine. Go ahead. Clap for him, but we're not done with the questions yet. Okay. No, you guys can go.
Oh, no, if you're not done with questions, I'll stay.
Oh. Representative Syward.
I too want to thank you for coming. I'm kind of limited on my ability to talk, but I was in FFA all 4 years in high school also, and very involved in it, and actually ended up farming for 50-some years. So I don't know if that was a good sign or not, but appreciate what you do. And my granddaughter, like I said, was involved in it very high at K-State. Maybe any of you knew her. It was Caitlin Syward, you know. So anyway, thank you for being here and putting forth the effort to come and talk and visit with people. And thanks for the pin, by the way.
All right, any other questions? Okay, well, I know, again, appreciate you all being here. You've been here all day, and thanks, Representative Mosier, for kind of shepherding them around. I had other things, so I didn't get to spend as much time. But as always, you all do a great job in committee. Just so you know, in one of those days I was late, I think. Well, that was the reason why. But anyway, it was a different committee. It was Representative Mosier's committee. When you vote on the new license plates, one that is working its way through is one for the Kansas FFA Foundation. So I will advocate for your support of those, because I think it's important as we look at the future of agriculture. And Representative Schlingensliepen probably wants to carry that bill, so he has said. And the Sesame Council will be next year. But again, thank you all. The best of luck. This is always, we've been doing this now for at least for the 5 years that I've been the chair of the committee. I think it's important to highlight, and you also hopefully see what is a dysfunctional functioning state government. So, but all the best. And if you all want to stick around, I think we'll have a pretty interesting meeting the rest of the time. So you all that need to go to your visit, by all means do. And again, thank you so much.
And thank you.
Okay, that is always inspiring. And yeah, some of us got the little blue, the jacket pins, or what they call them. I left mine it's in a pile somewhere, so I'll have to find it. But I was not involved in FFA, much like Representative Mosier. Our school was too small to have it, and but I had a daughter that was in it, and have a long history of hopefully of support and know what it can mean to the lives of young people and as they continue on. With that, let's go now to a hearing on House Bill 2297 that is authorizing the Animal Health Commissioner to issue permits for raccoon ownership and so on. So with that, we will call on advisor Kyle Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Under House Bill 2297, it would be unlawful to possess a raccoon as a pet in the state of Kansas without a raccoon ownership permit from the Animal Health Commissioner. Currently, under state law, it's currently unlawful to own a raccoon, but that prohibition is through regulation, not an explicit statutory restriction. So this would create a method by which it could be legal to own a raccoon if a person gets the appropriate permit. One of the requirements, raccoons would need to be vaccinated against rabies and other diseases and undergo annual veterinary checkups. Owners would be required to provide a safe and secure environment with enclosures meeting specific standards. Breeding raccoons in captivity would be prohibited unless licensed by the USDA. A framework would be established to connect permittees with licensed breeders. Applicants would also need to complete an educational program on raccoon care before receiving a permit. Public awareness campaigns would be implemented to educate residents about raccoon ownership responsibilities. The commissioner could inspect permittees' premises once per year with additional inspections if violations or complaints occur. If a permittee is unfit to care for a raccoon, efforts would be made to rehome the animal with euthanasia as a last resort. Local governments would be prohibited from enacting stricter raccoon ownership regulations than state law. Fees for applications, renewals, inspections, and transfers would be established with penalties for violations. In extraordinary circumstances, permittees could appeal for fee deferments or waivers. The commissioner could adopt rules and regulations to implement the requirements of the bill, and the term raccoon would be defined as any animal wholly or partially of the species Procyon lotor. Some of the language in the bill is based off of current statute for domesticated deer in Kansas, including the regulation by the Animal Health Commissioner. House Bill 2297 would become effective upon publication in the statute book. With that, I'd be happy to take any preliminary questions.
Any questions for Kyle? Representative Blex?
Thank you, Kyle. This doesn't distinguish between wild raccoons or captive breeder raccoons, does it?
It does not.
Thank you.
Other questions for Kyle? Seeing none. Heather, fiscal note?
Mr. Chairman, we have not received a fiscal note yet for this bill.
All right, thank you very much as we go through. Okay, we will now open it up for oral proponents. Up first, Representative Joe Sywert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not due with a lung infection or whatever I got for the last 2 weeks. I'm not going to be able to do my testimony. All I would like to say is I was a poor little farm kid back in the 50s, and we had a lot of wild pets. And actually, a little coyote we named Wiley after a famous movie star. So we had everything from about what you could imagine, even pheasants and quail. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my intern, Charles Simpson. He's our legislative intern, and he's a student at University of Kansas, and he's going to be able to read my written testimony for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Go ahead. You're welcome to committee.
Chairperson and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of House Bill 2297, a bill that aims to regulate raccoon ownership in Kansas. As an advocate for responsible pet ownership, I strongly believe that this bill strikes an essential balance between allowing individual freedom to keep raccoons while ensuring their health and safety, as well as the well-being of the community. Raccoons are intelligent, curious, and adaptable creatures, and when cared for responsibly, they can make unique pets. However, like any exotic animal, they require specific care, proper housing, and regular veterinary checkups to ensure their health and prevent the spread of disease like rabies. This bill's requirement for vaccinations, annual checkups, and education programs will help ensure that raccoon owners understand the responsibilities involved in keeping such a pet. The bill also sets minimum standards for enclosures, ensuring raccoons are housed in safe and secure environments. Additionally, it establishes clear regulations on breeding, prohibiting unlicensed breeding and requiring connections to federally licensed breeders. All of these provisions ensure that raccoons are properly cared for and prevent irresponsible ownership. Kansas is not alone in regulating raccoon ownership. In fact, several other states, such as Florida and Texas, have successfully implemented similar programs, and they have become models for how we can manage raccoon ownership responsibly. The common thread amongst these states is that each requires a permit for ownership, along with mandatory training and education for the owner. These regulations ensure that owners are well informed and capable of providing the proper care, while ensuring that raccoons receive the attention and environment that they need to thrive. Key elements that are also included in this bill. In conclusion, House Bill 2297 is a responsible approach to regulating raccoon ownership in Kansas, and it ensures that raccoons are properly cared for, educates owners on the responsibilities involved, and establishes safeguards to prevent the improper breeding or mistreatment of these animals. By following the example of other states that have successfully regulated raccoon ownership, we can create a model program that benefits both pet owners and the broader community. This bill offers a common sense solution that protects both human and animal health, and I strongly encourage the committee to support its passage. Thank you.
Any questions? Simple questions. Anything hard goes to Cywert. Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This might be to the representative or one of my colleagues who's a veterinarian. How common is it for a veterinarian to be equipped to examine raccoons?
I will throw that to one of our veterinarians. Representative Gardner, you want to try first?
Well, that might be a bit of a problem. You know, one problem I see is, you know, I haven't been engaged in active practice here of anything but horses for a number of years, but it's my understanding we don't have any approved vaccine, rabies vaccine for raccoons other than an oral vaccine that's only available to government agencies to help control rabies outbreaks. And that is put into little packets with fish meal in them, and they put them out there for the raccoons to eat. And that's done in a very controlled manner. And so the requirement in this bill that they be vaccinated for rabies would appear to be problematic, as well as finding animal health care for them.
Representative Droege, comment?
Yeah, I'd echo what Representative Gardner said. Vaccine's not labeled for raccoons. It's been kind of proprietarily or snuck in there sometimes. But there's another thing I think about is I've been around a number of raccoons that were pets, and some of them are just adorable. Some of them are dangerous. You take a 30-pound animal with teeth and claws that is not a domesticated animal, they can be a little bit scary. The other thing is I would think about a veterinary practice's handling of raccoons. You know, as a veterinarian, you need to be cognizant of the safety of your personnel. And that's another situation. Now, we handle bad cats and bad dogs with special equipment too, but it's just one of those things I would look at pretty hard before I would be a proponent. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? You okay? Okay. All right. Who goes first? Representative Mosley, go ahead. How many?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, I think I only have one question today, maybe. So the difference between like a pet that's a dog and a pet that is a wild animal that has been brought into the home is that my dog is an ancient breed. He is a very lovely Shih Tzu, and he has had generation of breeding to get him to just being slightly sassy. So for raccoons, from what I'm reading, and then from what I got from a couple of animal advocates, after 3 to 5 years, they turn into wild animals again. Like they tend to be moody animals. They going back to like the teeth and the, all those things. Someone has to have really highly skilled, someone has to be really highly skilled for Mr. Sywert. This is a bill that you want to have a pet raccoon, or was people or were people coming to you for said pet raccoon? Or like what got to the point where you're like, this is the thing that I want to champion. I want to be the king of raccoons.
Representative Sywert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wish I could talk better. But again, like I said, in the 50s, we had a lot of wild animal pets, including a coyote named Wiley. And he would come around every morning while we was in the milk barn. But we've had raccoons, we've had possums, and had a lot of different animals. And again, I understand the question. The question is, a lot of people have them and don't realize it, and they didn't realize they're not a legal pet. And that's the question of the putting forth with the bill, is so that the people that have them already, that have them as pets and other pets, that, they're not going to be persecuted. Because again, we had a little deer, and not a John Deere, but this was a John Doe, And we had a lot of fun with pets and animals in the rural areas. So this is why I'm introducing the bill.
All right, Representative Blex, and then we'll come back over here. Yes.
Oh, there ain't enough time. I've spent 30 years dealing with raccoons from canine to stemper. They can carry that to where they lose disorientation, and they're right. There's no rabies vaccination that controls them. And a wild animal is exactly that. It should be wild. And I know there's a lot of pets around, but anytime you imprint an animal on humans and you find a pet that may have lost its mother and a tree falls down, you grab the baby. It is cute and adorable. I will not dispute that. But the problem of it is that once it grows up and it goes through the hormonal changes, it is going to be mean and nasty when it comes breeding season. And a lot of times that's once or twice a year, and they're totally unpredictable. I've seen more damage done to pet raccoons than you can believe, and they're a pretty high priority of carrying, after skunks and foxes on rabies. So, how are we gonna deal with these? Who's gonna know whether it's a wild raccoon? And you're gonna have, and when it becomes a coon when it gets in my corn patch, not a sweet corn patch, not a raccoon, and I'm gonna take care of your $500 coon that you're going to have without educational training. And, how's a neighbor we legally trap them. We have a season, we have a coon dog season, and your dogs ain't going to be able to tell between the pet and that. I think it's just opening a can of worms. It's just like people find a cute little fawn in the woods and mama's not around. They think mama's about 60, 70 yards away. They bring it in, imprints on human, goes to a rehabilitator, and then rehabilitator gets tired of it when it gets a set of antlers this big and starts in the mating season, and you got a huge problem, and you got to release it into the wild, and it's going to get hit on the road, or you're going to have to euthanize it. I could tell you, I could go on for 2 hours over the horror stories I've had to deal with, and coons has been a high priority.
Thank you, Representative Blex. You can start that about 5:03, okay? 2 hours worth. No. Representative Page.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering who's going to educate them, and how long does that take? Is there a set time to train people, or who's doing the training?
Yeah, we got to get in that mic. But basically, the question was, if I may,
Yes,
is how long do they have to be trained, educated in order to be domesticated? Do you have that answer, Representative Seibert?
No, to be honestly, no. All I know is that when you just pretty much like or Representative Bleck said, you meet them through adversities, generally speaking, and they can become pets. But I've had a lot of adult friends who are 3 to 5 years friendship, and I can't stand to be around them neither. So,
Okay.
Okay, just hang on. We got a list. Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it against the law to own a raccoon even if you just live out in the country away from anyone else, or is this just applying to people that live in towns and cities?
We will have Dr. or Representative Droege. You have a question? Do you have a comment? Oh.
Raccoon's considered a wild animal. It's not considered legal to own. You're supposed to notify the Fish and Game if you get a wild, like a baby raccoon falls out of the tree or something like that. And I wanted to approach the domestication. Dogs were domesticated over hundreds and thousands of years to get them domesticated. Horses, cattle. You can't domesticate in one generation. You might gentle or have some just adorable raccoons. And I had a roommate in veterinary school that had one that would just took over the refrigerator. It would hide until you opened the refrigerator door, and then it would take over the refrigerator, and you couldn't even go in the kitchen. So domestication is a lengthy problem.
Okay, but is it? I want maybe the other proponent who was wanting the bill, and then that gives us more to ask questions. No. I'm fine. I just want to make sure with all the things we're talking about, to make sure that, that all these questions aren't answered before the one who really is kind of, want to make sure we had this hearing. Yes. No, it's fine. And is everybody okay with that, that we can come back? Or do you have you may have a specific question? Okay. Then we'll do that one. Representative Rozier then.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chair. For the carrier of the bill, or his intern, my question, it seems like there's a loophole here for veterinarians protection. Are veterinarians allowed to not necessarily discriminate, but say no to providing, so say we pass this, right? Mrs. Dr. Blevins over at Vetco in Manhattan, legally, can she say no if it's if they're legally allowed to have that pet? Can she say no? Is she going to be protected for her rights as a veterinarian to provide care for that animal? That's my question on the bill, and it doesn't really describe that differential. And if it's not just the veterinarian, but say the practice in itself, they have the ability to decline certain types of pet insurances. They have the ability to decline pets that maybe aren't fixed or of a dangerous, breed. Would they be able to do the same with these raccoons?
Representative Seibert.
thank you. Again, I apologize for my voice, but that's a very good question. That's why this bill came about, to give them legal immunity to do it if it's considered a pet. So that should answer every question you just asked.
Okay. Is yours a general or one for Representative Seibert? I mean, if it is, and I don't want to.
Mine is general.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for being up here. And then they'll all be available for questions in just a moment. Let's bring up also as a proponent, Stephen Caspar. All right. Welcome to.
You can call me Caspar.
Whichever one. All right. Welcome to committee.
Thank
Is
you.
your mic on?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. You're probably wondering why I'm standing up here. Well, one is because I thought it sounded like a lot more fun to talk about raccoons than budgets and taxes right now. So, why am I standing here is because I actually came up with the bill. And the way I came up with the bill is I have a passion for raccoons, clearly. There's a lapel that's a raccoon, just to give you an idea of how much I like these guys. So for the last 4 years, I have fed and trained wild raccoons on my deck. I see probably between 18 and 22 of them every single year. It is the highlight of my life. These are the things that you do when you become an empty nester. You start playing with raccoons in the backyard. So I understand, and a lot of the questions that have come up and a lot of the statements I look forward to addressing. Raccoons often are perceived as wildlife. There's no doubt about that. But what most people don't know is that there's currently 20 states that this is legal in, 100% legal. The USDA in 1966 enacted AWA, which allowed the breeding of raccoons. So if we're talking about, what other states around us actually have this, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Missouri. This is not a new thing. This isn't something that started a generation ago. This is something that's been going on since the mid-'60s. There's a lot of misinformation around these guys. So when we talk about the term domesticated versus wildlife, domesticated animal refers to a process of domestication resulting in generic and behavior changes that distinguish them from wild ancestors. Domestic involves specific breeding over generations to emphasize traits, behaviors, tameness, adaptability. Again, this has been going on since 1966. And to your question about the veterinarians, your Kansas State Statute 28114, subset C, except as permitted by this Secretary, attempts to immunize skunks, coyotes, raccoons, foxes, and other wild animals known to be involved in transmission of rabies shall be prohibited. So there is a law currently in place on a quote-unquote wild raccoon. There are 6 different breeds since 1966 that you will not find in the wild. Most people don't know that. And all of these are through a USDA breeder. We aren't talking about plucking one out of the backyard. That's an absolute mistake that I am violently against. In fact, I think you guys probably all saw in the news the story in New York about the raccoon and the squirrel that were taken away. That was a wild animal because they didn't follow the rules. And the rules are really simple. The USDA has laid this out for quite some time. There are very specific things that they have to adhere to. Otherwise, they can't move these raccoons across the United States. I get it. To the veterinarians in the room, you're right. They are a rabies vector species, 100%. However, since the CDC has been tracking rabies, there has been one case ever of a person actually getting rabies from a raccoon. In fact, less than 10 people every single year actually even get rabies. When you look at the AVMA, the American Veterinary Medical Association, they track per state actual raccoons from the wild that have come up with rabies, because nobody's tracking domestic raccoons in Kansas City or in Kansas. There are 0 cases of any raccoon, wild, having rabies in the last few years. In fact, the #1 animal, believe it or not, is skunks and dogs. The last thing is I would also mention that there is no case of any USDA-bred raccoon contracting rabies. Now, there are other things that are certainly in play, and that's what's being addressed in the bill with roundworms and distemper and pario and the rabies vaccine. Granted, it is not, quote-unquote, been authorized for raccoons, but it is a staple and a mandatory vaccine in all the other 20 states. And again, the point of it working, there haven't been any cases of any domesticated raccoons, at least by definition. So I understand there are concerns. There are really 4 pieces to this that I came up with. Public safety. When we're talking about enclosures, I'm not talking about, hey, you put up a pin. I'm talking about you submit a blueprint, and it should be to keep the animal safe, to keep it in the house, but also to enrich its life. You can't just pluck an animal. I get it. They've been around since 1966 from a domestic standpoint, but you still can't expect, like when you get a cat, and my wife and I have TNR'd and rescued cats forever, and I would argue that a feral cat that you're trying to catch might be as crazy as some of the raccoons. But when you look at building these enclosures, it should be approved. It should be about enhancing the life of the raccoon. The impact banning any raccoon from being kept captive, that's wild. It has to come through a USDA breeder in order to ensure that none of this stuff happens. Health risk, I have a slew of vaccines. I have talked to multiple vets across the United States. I have a vet that's literally 15 minutes for me that's in agreement that this can be done and it can be safe. If they don't want to work on a raccoon, it's like any other exotic breed. We have exotic cats that are legal, servals, Chelseas, parrots, ferrets, sugar gliders. Not every single vet will see them or wants to see them. And I think that that still remains their prerogative. But when you look at the way I designed this bill, it's not supposed to be easy to get. You shouldn't just, not everybody should just get a permit. This is a commitment. And there are a lot of people out there that don't even understand that about cats and dogs. And you see all the videos of cats and dogs being dumped. I don't want this to happen. If you can go through and jump through these hoops and you really want a raccoon, or you're just bored and want to know what it's like to live with a drunk 4-year-old, then it shouldn't be easy to get, right? Look at the key points of the bill. Permits would require proof of housing, veterinarian care, and compliance to USDA breeding. I have it built in that every single year these have to be updated. If not, you receive a fine. If you continue to violate it, there's a period of time where they can come take the raccoon from you. Again, every single raccoon has to be through a USDA licensed breeder. Nothing wild. The program would include pre-ownership, education, training. So the education process, I have approximately 100 other owners across the United States and various states who have all volunteered to help put together the educational program and willing to actually do it. What would it look like? It would be an online course. It would be about diet. It would be about environment. It would be about the enclosures, about safety. It would be about all those things, and they would literally just do the course online. It would be approved, and then that one could be off. Not to mention, every single one of these steps in the process, I've created a revenue stream, again, not to make it easy for people just to go do this, and it automatically sustains itself the minute you let this bill go. There's not a budget concern around it. Enclosure standards, owners have to provide a dedicated room, which a lot of people aren't going to do or won't want to do. So again, it goes back to how bad do you really want a raccoon. They do require specialized diets. You can't just feed them marshmallows. Otherwise, they will turn into 30-pound crazy things. They have to be fixed as humanly fast as possible. So like with any feral cat or any other cat, dog, really any animal, you need to have fixed as soon as possible. And that will curtail a lot of it. There are hundreds and hundreds of owners that have no issues and have had their raccoons for 15, 20 years. And they do have a life expectancy of about 20 years in captivity compared to 2 to 5 maybe in the wild. Ethical sourcing, they would have to come from a USDA breeder. To prevent wildlife exploitation, raccoon ownership, again, just limited to those licensed breeder. Any captive wild raccoon will remain illegal, ensuring that all the wildlife populations remain undisturbed. Regulatory inspection. So this one might raise some eyebrows, but I feel it's important that there are yearly inspections on the enclosures, on the room. Again, this isn't just about keeping the public safe. It's also about making sure the raccoon gets what it wants and what it needs to continue to thrive as a pet. Again, we've established that by definition, USDA-bred raccoons since 1966 are multiple generations through and are domesticated. But they still should have an environment that enriches their lives. They're here for us, and we should make it as awesome as an environment for them as we possibly can. Permit process, as I mentioned earlier, would create an immediate ROI for the state on day one. Public awareness and education programs, I think, are absolutely pinnacle. Statewide regulations to prevent local discrepancies. What I didn't want is I wanted this committee to say, hey, this is the way it is, and nobody else can say, well, this is a little lax, we can do this. No, this should be a standard that's set. It doesn't matter where in Kansas you're at. It should be set completely. And also understand this proposal includes a preemptive clause ensuring that pet raccoon ownership is regulated again at the state level. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kansas has an opportunity to modernize its laws in a way that promotes responsible pet ownership while safeguarding public environment. With 20 states already permitting pet raccoons, we have clear evidence that proper regulation can ensure public safety and animal welfare. The framework outlined in this proposal draws from the most successful models of various states across the nation. The thoroughness of this bill takes the best of those states and sets a new standard that Kansas can set on what raccoon ownership looks like. Furthermore, the fees involved will put the budget for this in the black and ensures on day one that we have immediate success with the program. I urge the committee to consider support of this initiative, which will allow Kansas residents to legally and responsibly own raccoons while upholding high standards of animal welfare. With that, I thank you and open it up for questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Casper. All right, we had some general ones. Let's go back to, I believe, Fairchild. That's right, you got yours. Schlingensiepen.
You might have sort of indirectly addressed this. I originally thought that, creating a situation in which people can legally own raccoons would lead to people shipping wildlife hither and thither across the country and possibly spreading rabies and other diseases across the country as well, which are currently kept at bay. But it sounds like you're talking about a domesticated USDA bred variety of raccoon, whatever that means, but something very specific and not about domesticating or attempting to domesticate raccoons currently living in the wild.
Yeah, I would never advocate taking a wild raccoon and trying to domesticate it. You can't do that. When you look at, if DNA is the determining factor between a domesticated raccoon and a wild raccoon, you could take any of the six different versions of raccoons that are out there now, and their DNA does not match a wild raccoon because they're domesticated. So at absolutely no point do I ever recommend that it be a wild animal. A wild animal needs to stay a wild animal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Kyle Hamilton, clarification request.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to state real fast, there might be a little bit of a gap between intent and the current text of the bill. I believe if the idea is to ensure that it would only be USDA bred raccoons that people could own with a permit, additional language would have to be added to the bill. Probably subsection D on page 1, or maybe even the definition of raccoon on the last page. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that. Representative Mosley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to phrase this properly. First, I'm happy I never got a chance to witness my parents as empty nesters because they had my little brother in their mid-40s, so did not have to witness raccoon dad. My question to you is there like a raccoon ownership enthusiast group in Kansas where there's going to be like an influx of people who they've been waiting for this moment, or is this kind of like a one-off or two-off, like a handful of people want to have raccoons?
Great question. So locally, we have over 100 that have already signed the petition that actually want to move forward with this. There is a huge movement, and then when you look United States-wise, I know I'm in my mid-50s, I'm on TikTok. I don't know what's the matter with me again, empty nester. I got to put my raccoon somewhere on video, so it's TikTok, right? But when you look at, I'm not joking, I have probably 100 other people that I talk to. So does everyone know the story of the raccoon and squirrel in New York and that whole mess?
I'm familiar.
I actually have the woman that was helping him try to do this legally is an advocate for this, and me. I know her personally. I've been brought into this community on a nationwide level, and it has come now to, Nebraska's got it, Oklahoma's got it.
Those are not great states to be comparing us to, but.
And for the record, I will admit, Arkansas is a little loose in their process. You don't actually have to get a permit for one, and you can get them from the wild until you get 6 of them. Now, to your point, I don't know who the heck would want 6 of those things, but especially wild ones. But there is a huge movement, and this isn't going to be, I'm not going to be the only person, if this goes through, to have a pet raccoon. I can assure you that.
And then I guess my other question would be, what are the ways that people can legally possess a raccoon in a state?
So, like any other state?
In Kansas,
You can't. The only way that you could have a raccoon in your possession is to be an actual wildlife rehabber.
You said that you're an empty nester.
I actually looked at that. Even though I built this bill to not be easy to get the permit, it is, in order for me to become a rehabber, I have to have credentials and letters of approval from a zoo. I mean, it would take years, and it doesn't make sense because I'm not dealing with wild raccoons. We're talking about domesticated animals, so it's a little bit different.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Blex?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. You talked about an enclosure, and then I heard you say room. We don't have standards for dogs or cats for our side. So they're going to be in a cage, but they're going to run whenever you want them out, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so but a dog has a kennel, right? A lot of times we kennel train our dogs. Okay. And sometimes, they're pretty big and they go in it every single night. Same concept here. But the difference is I want a dedicated room, one, because it weeds out irresponsible ownership. If you can't dedicate a room in your house, you probably don't need a raccoon. But the other part of it is having an enclosure that they can go in at night so their room is set up from an environmental standpoint, slides, things they can climb, things that keep their brain going. Just like we do with a cat, you take the wand and you play with them. It keeps them stimulated, but at night they go back into their kennel.
Okay, follow up. I got a real concern with the fact that you're preventing any local control. I don't know of any self-respecting coon that would go by a city garbage pail and not just tear it up. So, we got cities, you can't have a rooster, you can't have a Rottweiler or a pit bull. I think we're going to run into a lot of opposition from our cities of trying to restrict this because, like I say, there's no coon that will pass up a garbage pail.
That's true. That's true. So
thank you.
The reason I put that in there is the level of standard is consistent across the state, that another city couldn't go, well, we want to make it a little more lax. No, it should be very thought out and allowing the revenue stream to come through the state as opposed to sidelining through a city, and then gives you complete control to set the standard, which is the right way to do it, in my opinion.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Any other wish to testify as a proponent of this bill? Seeing none, we will move on. And we have oral opponents, Spencer Duncan from the League of Kansas Municipalities. Mr. Duncan, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. I am Spencer Duncan, Government Affairs Director for the League of Kansas Municipalities, representing the cities of Kansas. If you want people to have raccoons, that's really under your tent to figure out and decide whether Kansas should own raccoons. And so, thankfully, one of the things I'm happy to cede local control to on that decision, right? But we have two primary concerns with this bill. The first is the local control piece, the section that does eliminate any local control ability. Two problems with that. First of all, I know I'm a broken record around here, but constitutional home rule, local control powers, but more specifically, not allowing us any sort of control mechanism becomes a problem if you're in the middle of a neighborhood and suddenly someone owns 10 raccoons, right? Most cities have some limits, whether it's a limit on how many animals you can have in general. Chickens is a big one if you want some sort of reference. Most cities either have a rule that says how many chickens you can own, or they say you have to at least have what they call the appropriate space for the number of chickens you have, whatever that number is. This would not give us any of that local authority to make those determinations, which for the rural areas and some county areas, and if you're a hunter or you have these larger, those may not be issues at all. But Just think about what happens in your neighborhoods whenever somebody does get a chicken or has 7 or 8 or 9 dogs and a whole bunch of cats, the issues that happen within your neighborhood on that. So we would like to retain some sort of ability to put into place some of those local constraints that really apply to any other legal animals that people can have within the city limits. The second issue we have with this bill, which is a concern to us, is the local licensing piece. Right? Because the reality is, even if the state controls this, when somebody calls animal control or the police, the state's not going to be anywhere to be found, right? It's going to be local animal control officers or local police departments that have to show up and figure out what's going on. So for that piece, we would like some sort of local licensing ability so that we can, one, collect a fee to help offset some of the costs that are going to be associated with those, and two, so we know where all these animals are, so that if these issues arise, we understand, oh, this is a raccoon issue, and they've got one legally or not legally. So those are our big primary concerns with the bill, and we hope you consider them if you choose to move this forward. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions for Mr. Duncan? Representative Roth.
So if your concerns were addressed as like an amendment to the bill, then you would be neutral or a proponent?
We'd be neutral, because again, whether you want folks to have raccoons is your call, so we're neutral on that position.
Sure.
We just want those local constraints in the licensing piece.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Also on the line with us, she has written only, but she is available if we do have questions. That is Dr. Erin Petro. She is with KDHE, and she is the state health. Somebody help me out.
Hi, sir. I'm the state public health veterinarian at KDHE.
There you go. Do you, after hearing this, do you have any comments or any questions that our committee has?
Rabies that was mentioned, that is a major human health concern when it comes to pet ownership of raccoons, primarily because there is not a labeled vaccine for rabies in raccoons. So we don't have the studies that we have on injectable rabies virus vaccines and on the oral rabies vaccines. It's not 100% effective because raccoons are rabies reservoir species. So the virus passes between this species kind of naturally. So the signs and symptoms are unpredictable, the incubation period is unpredictable, and whether or not they're going to survive infection is also unpredictable. In 2022, which is our latest nationwide surveillance data, there was over 1,000 raccoons that were positive for rabies, and actually our last human death in the United States that was due to a rabid raccoon was only in 2018. So it is something that we see very consistently.
Okay, committee, she is here. If you have any questions from KDHE standpoint, Representative Blex.
Thank you for testimony. Do you have any experience with the so-called domestic raccoons, or has all your experience been with wild?
Yes, sir. All of my experiences with wild raccoons, from a public health standpoint, we do consider raccoons a wild animal, and even ones that are kept in captivity as so-called pets would be considered a wild animal.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Neely.
Yes, doctor. Can you explain, they said that they were prevalent for distemper. Can you explain to some of us that don't know exactly all the different symptoms that distemper might have?
Sure, yeah. So raccoons do get canine distemper virus, which is transmissible from raccoon to raccoon, but also to our domestic dogs. So there's a concern there. They can have a variety of symptoms. It can be respiratory type symptoms, but they can also have neurologic symptoms, which is concerning because that can be confused for rabies virus. So anytime that we have neurologic symptoms, we always have to have rabies on our differential. So that would mean that even if this raccoon were sick with distemper, we would have to euthanize it and test it for rabies to ensure that it wasn't rabies. And then we would be able to do the testing for distemper. And that's a real concern too, because say these animals are vaccinated. Let's just take an animal that there is a labeled vaccine for, like dogs. If a dog bites somebody and they've been vaccinated for rabies, we have really high confidence in that vaccine. And we know the clinical course of rabies in dogs. So we can observe that animal for 10 days and know that if they're alive at the end of that 10-day period, they don't have rabies. So that's a really good way that we can prevent rabies in people, is through a good vaccine and that public health follow-up. Raccoons, on the other hand, we don't know the clinical course of rabies reliably in raccoons. So they could survive long after 10 days, even though they have rabies and are actively shedding it in their saliva. So unfortunately, if they bite someone, even if they've been previously vaccinated, they would have to be euthanized because the only test for rabies is a postmortem brain sample. So I'm concerned from that standpoint, because you're going to have people that see these animals as pets that, unfortunately, if they bite or scratch someone, that's a potential rabies exposure, and they'll have to be euthanized and tested for rabies.
Okay, Representative Blex.
A follow-up on that, I've had a little experience. I'm not as qualified as you are, but when canine raccoon distemper, they'll lose their fear of humans, and they'll get emaciated, and then they're primarily a nocturnal animal, and they'll stay out in the daylight hours. Actually, the pre-symptoms are almost real. I imagine you'll agree with me. It'd be hard to tell from rabies because they lose their fear of humans, and you can just walk right up to a wild animal in the daylight hours, which is highly unusual.
Absolutely.
Representative Rozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From a logistical standpoint, too, I want to point out that if you didn't know that K-State does thousands of tests for rabies every year, and so just thinking about what that would do to the influx of what we do at K-State means that the more tests that we're going to have to do on rabies means the less time that we have to treat other animal-related diseases or issues across the state. And what they do at our labs at K-State is one of our forefronts for battling agriculture-related diseases in Kansas. So.
Anything else for the doctor? Thank you for being online. Appreciate it for answering the questions. Also, we have the written only opponents. Representative John Carmichael from the 92nd District, Jay Hall from the Kansas Association of Counties, and Susan Cunningham, a private citizen. Anyone else to speak on an opponent to HB 2297? Seeing none, we have neutral testimony, oral neutral testimony by Elizabeth Chambers, who is a policy intern with the Kansas Department of Agriculture. Welcome to committee.
See if I could get this lower for me. Good afternoon, Chairman Rogers and members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Chambers, and I'm a policy intern with the Kansas Department of Agriculture. I appreciate the opportunity to provide neutral testimony on House Bill 2297. This bill would ultimately authorize Animal Health Commissioner to issue permits for raccoon ownership. Ultimately, this is a policy decision for the legislature, but the agency would like to highlight some of the issues that the legislature would need to address regarding animal and human health risks and current statutory and regulatory requirements. Raccoons are known to carry infectious diseases that can be transmitted to humans through exposures to saliva, urine, feces, bites, and scratches. Both young and mature raccoons can shed viruses, bacteria, and parasites that can cause infection and disease in humans when exposed. Rabies is the most common type of disease risk from raccoons. It's a virus that spreads through contact with saliva or by being bitten or scratched by an infected animal. While rabies vaccines are available for livestock and pets like dogs and cats, House Bill 2297 requires that raccoons also be vaccinated. However, there are no vaccines that are currently labeled for general public use for raccoons. The Animal Health Commissioner is responsible for the health and welfare of Kansas livestock and domestic animals. Currently, state regulations under the Kansas Department of Health and Environment restrict the possession or sale of raccoons, skunks, foxes, and coyotes and prohibit keeping these animals as pets. Let's see. Vaccinating these animals to prevent the spread of rabies is also prohibited, as outlined in KRA, specifically Section 28.114. House Bill 2297 would broaden the Animal Health Commissioner's authorities beyond the health and welfare of livestock and domestic animals to include raccoons, which are currently considered wildlife. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide neutral testimony on House Bill 2297 and share some of the concerns that would need to be addressed before this legislation were to move forward. I am now happy to stand at the appropriate time for questions.
Okay, thank you. Good job. Also, folks from KDA are here. If Ms. Chambers can't answer a very technical question, but we know she's been studying the last week to answer everything about this, right? Questions? Any questions? Representative Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Share with us a little bit about how you landed at the Kansas Department of Agriculture and what your current duties are there.
So I'm originally from Pahuska, Oklahoma, and I attended Northern Oklahoma College for 2 years, and I transferred to K-State. I'm an agricultural communications major, but I'm specializing in ag policy. So I heard about an internship. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's the Kansas Food and Agriculture, the Barry Flinchbaugh Kansas Food and Agriculture Policy Fellows Program. So I applied for that internship, and they go through a pairing process where you interview with different agencies and organizations, and they pair you with what your interests are. And so that's how I ended up at KDA.
Thank you. Welcome to Kansas.
Thank you.
Good. Anything else? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Also, anyone else wishing to testify as neutral to the bill? Seeing none, we have written only neutral testimony by Christopher Kennedy, Acting Secretary of the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. Representative Roth, question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just jumped on the Kansas Department of Health and Environment website, and on their website, it's on the Kansas rabies data portion. It's got their own web page. They tested 58 animals, 58 raccoons, and 58 came up negative. So there's data out there for all the different kinds of animals that they test for in Kansas, but there were 58 tested and they came back negative. Thank you.
Thank you for the information. Anything else? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on House Bill 2297. Now we will have action on bills previously heard, and before we get to that, this is the fun part where you say, yes, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2064, which is the removing the current solid waste permit extension for disposal of solid waste generated by drilling oil and gas wells. Mr. Fairchild, would you carry that bill, please? All right. House Bill 2095, that's the pump installation contractor licenses required existing exams, qualifications, and so on. Do I have a, Roth will carry that one.
What was the number?
2095. House Bill 2011, that's increasing crep acres. Mr. Blex, Representative Blex, would you carry that one? Thank you. And House Bill 2255, that is the Weights and Measures Bill. Representative Rozier will carry that bill. Okay. Two more. Now we will work House Bill 2172. Mr. Hamilton, would you describe that bill, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2172 would establish the Water Program Task Force to evaluate the state's water program, to evaluate the funding for the state water program, and require a report on those topics to the legislature and the governor.
Committee, what is your pleasure for this bill? Representative Neely?
Mr. Chair, I move that we pass HB 2172, favorable for passage.
Seconded by Featherston. Discussion? Representative Roth?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this particular bill, from my perception, we're just adding another layer onto this for somebody to look at what we're doing. I got with not the revisor's office, but legislative research. We've got, in 2025, 67.3 million going towards water from the state water plan, divided up into the Department of Agriculture, Kansas Water Office, Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Division of Environment, the Division of Health in the KDHE, Department of Wildlife and Parks and Tourism, and the University of Kansas. And I had found some other state monies going to some other organizations that I give that the Legislative Research Department didn't know about, and they're looking into those currently. And actually, we're up to about $94 million conservatively that the state of Kansas is spending on water and water conservation. And so we've got everybody doing this, but we're wanting, it looks like we're adding someone else to overlook and see what's going on, to hold some accountability, or just what, and how much is it going to cost to do that. And I just don't see of putting any more thousands or millions of dollars into this at this time, with all these other state departments working on water conservation. And so it's just some information. You know, we're spending millions of dollars already, and so I'm not for sure we need another layer in there, no matter what. So thank you for my little rant. Thank you.
Sure, that's fine. I'll address that after we hear from Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My comments are sort of along the same lines. I am going to vote for the water funding bill that we passed out of the Water Committee. However, I'm just not a big fan of creating new task force. I think that we should study water issues and discuss and pass water legislation in the House Water Committee. You know, right now it's only a committee that meets on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If we need more time to study water issues, perhaps leadership can make it a daily committee. I don't know if that'd be possible, but I just think something like that might be a alternative to creating a new task force. It is going to cost $90,000, and I would prefer to just spend that money on water programs and not on salaries for legislators.
Representative Mosley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just so that I am clear on what this bill does, we were spending a lot of money and it was very scattershot, and we're trying to bring it all under one umbrella so that it could be a synthesized plan and have something going forward, correct? To touch on the $94 million that Representative Roth brought up. Am I understanding that incorrectly? You're just gonna nod? Okay, that's fine.
I'll comment when, okay, all right. Okay, let's get into this. I requested the bill, and I appreciate the comments. This is the legislature getting control of water. I agree with what both of you said. This is not to create another agency, another sub whatever, to start throwing more money at it. What this is trying to do is to curtail, just like you said, how many different committees, how many different agencies have a foot in water. It's basically how many hands are in that bucket. And what happens is get everybody's hands in there, and there's not enough water in that bucket to do what we need to do. So what this is an opportunity for it to be led by the appropriators. That is us as legislators. Tomorrow we'll vote on the budget as appropriators. Legislature appropriates. Everybody else can have every comment they want to about water. Still goes back to money, and the money comes to the appropriators. And we as a legislature decide that we will take control of water moving forward. What the priorities are, where they're going, what's the proper size to deal with water. It's more than just irrigators. It's cities, it's clean water, it's municipalities, it's manufacturing, industry, all of that. Everyone needs water. You've heard it, I'm going to say it again. We can talk about the 4,712 bills or how many we had this year. The top priority is water. Without water, the rest of it's a moot point. From school finance to any social program. If we do not have water, we don't have anything. We're not here. So I'm not going to apologize for my passion of this. This is a way to finally get control, rather than simply create some other blue ribbon commission. I said it at a forum over the weekend. I do not want this put in a 3-ring binder that we can put up on a shelf. This needs to be out and be a working document. That's at least what I'm planning to do if this thing passes. So I hope that's pretty clear. Representative Blex.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair. And I can remember the days of the early serving on the Water Committee when we were supposed to get $8 million annually out of the EDIF fund, and it got swept. And that's another fancy word for stealing for you new recruits. And it was not funded. And water for up to the tune of near 84 million, I think, over those years was never funded. We were promised it. They were operating on about $14 million, which come from the fee. So we're long overdue, and I'm not saying we can make up for past sins, but this is certainly a start forward. I share your passion.
Representative Minix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll tell you the facts. The state water plan had been funded in 21 and 22 with $8 million of state general fund. The rest was made up, another 12 million roughly of fees from municipals, industrial, stock water, fertilizer tax, and some registrations on herbicides here in the state of Kansas. In 21 and 22, we added the 8 million of state general fund. The current state general fund would be at 43 million. 8 million of that original, and 6 of it was state general fund, and 2 were economic development funds, I guess, plus the 35 that we added back in 2023 session. That's what's coming out of the state general fund. When you quote 90-some million, part of that is federal funds that is coming to the state. Some of it's matched for the state money that we have. I'd love to see that number up in the 150 million deal if we have a few more state dollars and we can bring in some more federal match. There is need and demand out there for it. If we have small municipals come in and request 380 million for 17 to 19 million in funds to work on their own water systems, whether it's drinking water or wastewater. And I will tell you, 35 of those 43 million expire, sunset, on June 30th of 2028. It's up to people around this table right now to determine where we're going in the future. If you think you're qualified, that's fine. The task force idea to bring people together to study this from a legislative standpoint and move forward makes a lot of sense to me.
Representative Roth.
Well, help me understand then. So the Department of Agriculture and all of these people on this budget document that I have are not qualified to be studying water or doing water, or the water office that was created, or the governor's task force on water. I just don't understand what's being said here, and so you can help me, and I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I appreciate that. I think that's maybe one part of it, but I don't think anybody here is saying that these agencies that are handling some of the water are not qualified. What happens is, much like in your previous career, you had people had a little piece of what you ran. You kind of were overseeing everything, but there may be other people doing things on your behalf, and was it really heading the right direction, or all those homes together? So what this is trying to do is, because what we always hear is we'd solve the problem with more money. We just need more money. Well, instead of that, the legislature is saying, let's find out what best works for the resources we have. In the budget process, we cut a lot from what was proposed, what the governor proposed, and from what the legislature bipartisanly proposed. So what we're trying to do is put for this year, I believe, put kind of a placeholder there. Has really nothing to do with this bill. What this bill does is create this, yes, and it does. You can't do a one-time task force, a one-time commission, even the 50-year water plan, without some sort of action. I think, as we said earlier, with the makeup of this legislature and what the commitment has been by the speaker, normally water would be in the Natural Resources Committee, but the speaker, when he became speaker, thought it was important enough to make water its own committee again. And so that's why it does what it does, and we have learned that it's hard to get everything done. That's why we have water committees in this bill, in this committee, because they had some heavy lifts to do. So what this is trying to do, at least I believe that one of the goals will be, is, if you will, right-size water, looking at everything that touches water in Kansas. What does it bring? How does it all work together? And so there is that better relationship rather than the agencies coming and saying, well, just give us more money. Just give us more money. We'll figure it out. I think that's really where we've gotten to. And I think that's where, I don't want to speak for Chairman Minix, but it's kind of where we are in working with the administration and others and trying to put this together. But again, this is now the legislature rather than, say, a governor's office, which happened the last time with Governor Brownback and others. This is being driven by the appropriators of how we look moving forward. So with that, I do have an amendment to this bill. It is a amendment, Kyle, if you can get that passed out. It is some minor changes. There's some additions. If you want to do some subtractions, if you think the committee is too big, we will take those under consideration as well. But there is we'll have Supervisor Hamilton explain the quick changes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First change in this amendment is it would reduce the number of voting members from 29 down to 23. And the members that would be removed are the ones that would have been appointed by the legislative leadership from within the chambers. So you'll see, starting out with that crossed out H on line 21, it said one member of the House of Representatives appointed by the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And then the next line is one Kansas resident appointed by the Speaker of the House of Representatives. So it's just removing one of what would have been two appointees by each of these entities. And then next, on page 2, line 19, it changes one of the appointing authorities for one of the members, crossing out Kansas for conservation and replacing it with the Kansas Association of Conservation Districts. And then on page 3, in line 20, one of the requirements for the membership is that the task force shall consist of at least one member from each of the 5 conservation regions of the state, instead of having it at least 2 members from all of the regions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? I'll just do a quick explainer, and then we'll take Representative Gardner. You'll be up first. As this was putting together, it was too big. And I know some may, and we've had a lot of people ask if they wanted to be on it. There'll be a seat at the table for everyone. Again, this is, I believe, driven by the legislature. If somebody was inadvertently missed, that's what it was. It was not meant to be any sort of a slight. As we look at piecing all these things together, all the different ones that needed to be at the table through appointments of legislators or so on, that's kind of the idea, to try to make it to hear from all voices. And even if they're not one of those, either a voting member or an ex officio member, everyone will be welcome to give their input on what is and what isn't working. And I know some will say, well, you just had those consults this summer. Well, that's a different deal than, and maybe some of those will carry over. But we wanted to, make sure that the conservation districts were represented. That's why that changed. Local conservation districts are important as we look at water and conservation. So those are some of the deals. So Representative, who'd I say, Gardner? Yes, you're up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Point of clarification is, I was looking at the bill. Originally, there were 29 voting members, and this would take it to 23. But then there are 20 non-voting members. Is that the way the original bill? So that would take us from 49 members on this committee back to 43. Is that correct? Online.
Probably, but as far as the voting members, the ones that would be, right, Kyle, explain that. I'm not sure exactly how that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with the amendment, I see the 23 voting members on page 1, and then there are the 10 ex officio members. Was the previous speaker referring to another group as
It
well?
says on line 20, page 2, 10 ex officio members, and then the page 3, line 8, a local, it doesn't, I misread that. That's just point number 10, not
Yeah.
10 local water management entities.
As you get further down, it's kind of one where it's almost checking off boxes to make sure you have those groups represented in those selections.
Okay, I admit my mistake.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Committee, what's your pleasure on this amendment? Representative Neely.
Mr. Chair, that I move that we pass HB 2172 as amended.
Let's do the amendment first.
Oh,
Let's pass the amendment.
okay.
Yeah.
I move that we accept the amendment, favorable for passage.
Is there a second? Second by Mosley. Any more, so I should do that, I always do that wrong. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? So I'm sorry, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Amendment is added, carried. Any other discussion on the bill? Representative Minix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you read through this bill and you see all the different agencies that would like to be a part of it or whatever, 13 agencies in the state of Kansas, Corps of Engineers at the federal level, there's so many different parties involved on this. And I believe Julie, when she was here, said it's more complicated than transportation. And in a lot of ways it is. Part of the reason for this task force, funding would be a number one priority to me, but a second one was also to coordinate all those state agencies we have out there. We don't need them acting independently and doing different things. It's trying to bring everything into a focus with a long-term plan about where we want to be in the next 20 or 40 years. So that's kind of the purpose behind this. This issue's been kicked down the road for years and years, and there's never a better time to do something positive than today.
Representative Roth.
And thank you, Representative Minix. I agree with you. I mean, I think it's been kicked. I think as a person, as a candidate that runs on lowering the government footprint, reducing the state's budget and everything, when I saw this and was looking at this, we're already spending millions of dollars to do exactly most what the task force is doing and to save water. And the task force, if I understand it now, is going to take the Department of Ag, the Water Office, Health and Environment, those two divisions, University of Kansas, Wildlife and Parks, and I can't think of the other ones that I found that are one of them's getting $5 million in SGF that they'd never heard of, and they're looking into that. But they're going to take and look at all of those. And is there any way that any of the money required for this task force can come out of the existing funds that's being budgeted to these agencies? I mean, if you got 5 big agencies, you divide that out by 5, it's just taking a little chunk of change out of there. Is that a possibility?
I don't know. Right. Right. The Legislative Coordinating Council will determine, you know, if legislators get paid or whatever, if it's part of their official duties but the committee, if this is approved and signed, we move forward. I wouldn't get caught up on the cost of that. But who knows? I mean, ideally, we'd like to be, in probably 6 stops in Kansas to give, so people don't have to come here. I mean, that's again, I think once the thing passes, then we'll work with our colleagues in the Senate too. I'm sure it's going to be much different when it gets done in the Senate if we get it across here in the House. Representative Roth.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the explanations. I'm with you, actually, on doing something about water and then doing something about taking what we're spending and making sure that we're getting some bang for our buck and we're just not kicking a big can full of millions of dollars down the road and not really seeing anything for it. But we've had presentations here from different agencies saying, well, this is what we've done and we've saved water. We're doing drip irrigation. We're doing this kind of, we're not using as much water as we're doing. So we're getting something for it. But if I understand at this moment in time, this task force is going to take a look at everything that's being spent and then give a recommendation to what we should be doing to get a better bang for our buck. And that comes at this point at a $90,000 price tag. I'm just trying to get to a point that I'm going to be fully supportive of it, and I want to be, because I want to be a part of the solution.
And I appreciate that, and I think of a $12 billion budget to worry about $90,000, I think is missing the point. There has been a lot done and a lot of good things done with the investments we made in water over the years, from blue-green algae. We don't talk about that as much as we did when I first had, the last time we had a water committee. And I think that's part of the challenge, Representative, is there are good things coming and we do have reports, but when you have all these different agencies and sub-agencies throwing all this information at us, instead of saying, okay, how does it all work together? Even though it might, but it's also to make that connection, but it's also for the appropriators to get control back, and so we can work together as from the agencies and the administration and the legislative branch, all as we move forward. So that's the thing. Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I'm looking of the positions that's been cut, it is members of the legislature. Is it your intention that these Kansas residents being appointed not be members of the legislature?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's just a matter of cutting the numbers down. That's all it was, as we look at, assuming maybe the Senate would want to cut the numbers down, it would just mean that, say, leadership would only have 1 position rather than 2 that they would fill in order to get the other interested parties and stakeholders involved. That's all.
Okay. I'll be supporting the amendment and the bill. We need to move forward on water before it's too late. I was just hoping you would answer that in a way that would reduce legislators, to reduce costs, to allay some concerns.
Yeah, I think once it passes and once we put the formation together, I think all those things will be considered. Absolutely. Any other comments on the bill? Seeing none, Representative Neely.
Now, Mr. Chair, I move that we pass HB 2172 as amended, favorable for passage.
Second by Slingen Sheepan. Close enough? All right. Adam did so, Representative Smith did so well this morning. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Bill is passed out as amended. One more, House Bill 2254. Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2254 would require, with some exceptions, for milk processors to hold payments in trust for milk producers until full payment is received. You'll recall from testimony, there's one small, slight technical change that does need to be made on the first page of the bill if you move forward with it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Committee, what's your pleasure? Representative Neely.
Mr. Chair, I move that we pass HB 2254, favorable for passage.
Do I have a second? Seconded by White. Discussion? We do have a technical amendment. Pass it out, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a really small change in the definition of milk producer. There's a reference to subparagraph A that should have been updated to paragraph 1, and that's what this technical amendment would do.
Any questions on the amendment? Instead of subparagraph, it says paragraph. That's it. Any questions? Seeing none, Representative Neely.
I move that we pass the amendment favorable for passage.
Second by Rozier. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Post same sign. Amendment is carried. Back on the bill. Any questions? Seeing none, Representative Neely.
Mr. Chair, I move that we pass HB 2254 as amended, favorable for passage.
Seconded by Mosier. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Post same sign. Bill is passed out as amended favorably. Mr. White, Representative White, would you carry this bill? Sure. And on the Water Task Force 2172, I will carry that bill. I can carry it. You can? I can. Okay, well then Chairman Minix will carry that bill. Okay. There we go. I think that is it, what we're going to be doing in this first half of the legislative session. Sorry to keep you long, but it was important work we did today. Thank you, FFA officers, for being here. It was important. Again, we just watch your email. We will gather back after turnaround. We are off Friday and Monday, back on Tuesday at this time. I am not planning on meeting on that Tuesday, and we will plan to see what the Senate brings us. And, or do we have, that's not, is that the grassland? Oh, I'm sorry. We will meet that Tuesday. We have a presentation on grassland, but you'll be here anyway, so you might as well enjoy a presentation on grasslands in Kansas. With that, we are adjourned.